Hi and welcome back to 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗧. Today guys, we're going to be jumping down into the charts for Bitcoin, see what's been going on most recently and what I expect to happen next. As I get into this video, if you do find it useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you'll be kept up to date with everything that we do here at 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗧. If you've not yet joined us in Discord, links in the description down below. Fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. With all that said, done, and out of the way, let's jump down into this, right? So Bitcoin paired up with USDT. What you're looking at right now is just the hourly chart. Moves generally on here, they play out over a couple of days or so. Yesterday, just to briefly recap, we said that we were likely to move up towards $40,000. We got to 40,300. So we'll just move that B wave up to that high point just here now. And obviously, basically, that completes our C wave. Now, as I look at this, it's a slight overextension, but nothing too much. We'll go ahead and just show you what that looks like as well. If I put this here, you can see that we were expecting to be about 40,200 and we went to 40,300. It's a slight overextension on a 1-to-1 ratio, but nothing more than that. We are, of course, talking about a slightly bigger corrective pattern here, moving us down towards our low levels here. Okay, now, again, on that 1-to-1 ratio, just to recap what we did yesterday, we'll take the high point. We'll move this over to the recent high over here, where our B wave is, and we can see that we are now just going to be slightly higher. Just adjust this a fraction, and we can see that basically we are talking about 37,300 on the high end of this thing. So I'll go ahead and just move our line here. About there, that's it, and we'll go ahead and do this. Okay, cool. This thing gives us a bit of a target, right? So basically we are talking about 36,200 and 37,300, right? So that's our sweet spot right now for where we think the most common area of retracement is likely to be. Okay, so as we start to think about this move down, it won't be a straight line, there will be bounce, and we should pull on down. In fact, I do imagine this will actually be more like a 5-wave move, right? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something to that effect. Maybe because we kind of have a 5-wave structure over here. Right, so we'd kind of want to mirror this, right? So 5 waves down, 3 waves up, 5 waves down. We spoke about this a dozen times before. We should be thinking about a 5-3-5 structure here, taking us down to these areas of $36,000, $37,000. Okay, so that's kind of where we're thinking of heading for the most part on this hourly chart. And nothing really much has changed since yesterday, other than the fact that we went slightly higher than we were expecting, and therefore we have a slightly increased target zone down here at the bottom. Obviously, we've got the bigger play, which is a much larger ABC corrective play. Okay, this basically runs from up at, where are we? Yeah, about 42,799. Yeah, 7,976, sorry. Okay, so we have this big A wave coming down, then we had our B wave bounce, only to just short of $43,000, and then we pull back down here. That completes that move. Now, of course, this is a part of a much bigger play. If we zoom on out further, we can see that we actually have a big wave A. This is our B wave bounce, $43,000, just short of, and then we pull on down, and this actually should end about 34,000. Now, this is where things get interesting. The technical requirements for this C wave has already been met by dropping down lower than the original A wave. However, going down to $36,000 is an area that we would think might actually complete this entire C wave. It could be shorter, right? We think most commonly that it goes to the 1-to-1 ratio all the way over here at $34,000, but it's also possible that it's short. At the same time as it being possible as it's short, it can also go long. The most common though, and the highest probability is 1-to-1, and therefore we've marked this up at $34,000. But if anything changes within our wave counts of our subwaves, then of course we can adjust this target accordingly. But for the most part, we'll get down to this 36, 37. I expect to move up, and then we expect to pull back down again. Okay, so we end up with what might be this big ABC structure coming down. We then move on up, and then we move on back down again. Okay, that's kind of how I'm looking at this thing. I'm not looking at this as a single move. I'm looking at this maybe as a double or a triple corrective play, all inside this one C wave move down a little bit lower. Okay, so that's kind of how I'm looking at it, and I think that's something that we should probably be expecting to happen here. I think there's a high probability that that is the outcome. It is a slightly lower probability that this actually is the bottom. We hit the 36, 37,000, and then we move on out, and that's that. We're done. But I think that's an incredibly low probability. It's possible, just not very probable. In the same way, if we were to move down any lower than $34,000, I think there's going to be some significant buying pressure, and the stochastic RSIs are not really necessarily going to to support anything lower than $34,000 on the weekly chart, in my opinion. So I do think that that's going to be kind of rock bottom there. But again, it is still possible, just highly probably not probable, that we go down lower, right? So when we start thinking about 33,000, 32,000, these are areas that are going to be major buying blocks. Likewise, if we were to go down to $28,000, obviously there's going to be major buying occurring there, which actually brings me on to the next topic, okay, which is the kind of must-see data for BTC. So we're going to hop over to Glassnode, and we're going to start things off by taking a look at the balance on exchanges here. Now, balance on exchanges for BTC have been dropping at an absolute rapid rate, and this might make you wonder, where is the BTC going? Okay, so essentially what we've got here is the exchanges, and this is labeled up all exchanges, but actually down at the bottom here, it tells us exactly which ones. So we're talking Binance, Bitfinex, BitThumb, BitMEX, Bitstamp, Bittrex, Coinbase, Coincheck, FTX, Gate.io, Gemini, we've got HitBTC, 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗪, we've got Kraken, we've got KuCoin, Luno, OKX, and I don't even know how to say it, Poloniex. I'm going to say that. So, you know, not all exchanges are on this data, but these exchanges, specifically some of the main ones here. So when we think about what's going on, we've got Bitstamp, we've got Binance, you've got Coinbase, you've got Kraken, you've got KuCoin, etc. A lot of the really big exchanges are on this list, and they are losing BTC at a rapid rate, right? This actually goes back to early 2018 now. So if I shoot this time frame back, you can see here that we last were in this range, this low on our data. It was August 2018, right? So as we continue to lose Bitcoin off of the exchanges, we're going to get into or out of the bear market territory in the previous sense, and actually moving back into pre-bull run territory, Bitcoin shortages, okay? Now, I don't want to confuse people, so I'm just going to shoot this back down. But essentially, with Bitcoin going off the exchanges the way that it has been, this basically is indicating a significant shortage of supply. And when you see a significant shortage of supply and demand comes in, you see prices absolutely go crazy. They just increase massively. Now, this is very simple and to understand. It's basically, in a nutshell, supply and demand, right? If there is huge demand and little supply, the prices will be high. If there is hardly any demand and surplus of supply, the prices will be low. Okay, so when we are seeing Bitcoin leaving the exchanges, it makes you wonder, where is the Bitcoin going? And this is an important question because we see lots of noise. I guess I want to call it FUD. It's not really FUD as such, but it's just noise. Or fear, uncertainty, doubt, whatever you want to kind of label it as, in the space, saying that Bitcoin's going down to 20K, 10K, maybe Bitcoin's going to zero, right? There's lots of noise in the space, and it makes you wonder why there is that kind of noise in the space. Are people being manipulated into selling early because they think it might go down to 20,000, 10,000, zero, whatever, right? But where is the actual Bitcoin going? Right, very important that we understand this. Now, before I get over into where it's gone, I also want to highlight this report. It's one of my personal favorites, the net difference change, right? So basically 105,000 BTC left exchanges, those particular exchanges, again, all listed at the bottom of the report. Yesterday, right? That was just yesterday. We've gone over now 4 million this year. Okay, so add up all of these inflows, all of these outflows, the difference between the two is 4 million BTC has left exchanges. Now that's a lot of Bitcoin, right? 4 million Bitcoin is a lot. So the question you have to ask yourself is, where did it go? Okay, so with such a significant supply since January 2022 disappearing from the exchanges, the next thing that we have to do is we have to start checking some of these addresses. And we start thinking, where has that Bitcoin gone? Well, we can start by taking a look at anyone holding more than 10 Bitcoin. And that's actually started to increase since January. So you could say, okay, there's some, I don't want to call them whales. There's some dolphins out there, right, that are gathering up some Bitcoin. Anyone with 100,000, yeah, that's significantly increased pretty much around February time, right? So we can start to see that there are some, maybe some sharks in the water here that are populating their wallets with a bit of BTC, and they are doing this whilst telling you that it's going down. Interesting. And the 1,000 Bitcoin. So these are the whales. And what do we see? Well, we see Bitcoin wallets with over 1,000 BTC increasing dramatically. And I say dramatically, I mean, the chart makes it look dramatically. You've basically gone from 2,100 addresses to 2,300 addresses, right? So it's a couple of hundred more people have got more than 1,000 BTC in their wallets. And this is pretty much at the beginning of this year, February time, and they haven't sold off, they haven't dumped it or anything like that. There's a little bit of fluctuation at the top here. And again, the graph, because these are really small numbers, make it look worse than it is. You're talking about 30 different wallets there changed. But essentially, what we're witnessing here is an accumulation of Bitcoin. So the whales, the sharks, the dolphins, they're accumulating BTC while simultaneously telling people via their news outlets or social media or let's just say influencers or whatever, claiming that Bitcoin's going down to $20,000 or going down to $10,000, going down to zero is one thumbnail I saw the other day. And essentially, this is misguided. You got to do what the whales are doing, right? Do as they do, not as they say, as I often say on the channel. So when I look at the data, right, and scrap the Elliott wave theory if you want. If this is too complicated to understand, forget it, right? Doesn't matter. Essentially, what is the background data actually telling us? The background data is telling us, well, there's accumulation going on, right? The exchanges are a multi-year low, right? We see the net difference at over 4 million, right? 4 million Bitcoin in 4 months, right? 4 million in 4 months. That's an average of 1 million Bitcoin leaving the exchanges every month, right? That is not a sustainable model, okay? For one, Bitcoin is 21 million maximum supply if it was all already minted, which it's not. And two, obviously, some of that Bitcoin's already lost, right? So there's actually probably only around 19 million actually available out of the 21 million. And 4 million of it, let's hypothetically say it was all minted, 19 was available. Basically, we're talking about 4 million of that just disappearing, right? Gone. So that's over 20%. It's very significant. So when we start thinking about what this means, we are going to start to see lower prices. I still think the price of Bitcoin is being pushed down, and for obvious reasons, more accumulation. But eventually, once we come towards the end of these corrective moves, which I think are going to be $34,000, we are going to see Bitcoin move up quite rapidly. And once Bitcoin hits about 50, maybe a little bit higher towards the $60,000 range, that FOMO is going to kick in. And as soon as there's a bit of demand for this coin, I mean, damn, this thing is going to launch like a goddamn rocket. So I think it's really important that we understand what's actually going on in the background, what actually causes price movements, and what, ultimately is actually just noise in the space, right? Do as they do, not as they say. Follow the data. The data isn't going to lie to you. Of course, there are some inconsistencies with information. We have to understand that we have to trust Glassnode in this particular scenario, right? The data that Glassnode has got from these exchanges. There's a couple of things that we should acknowledge in regard to that. A, are the exchanges truthful in what they're providing Glassnode? And is Glassnode truthful about representing the information from the exchanges? At some point, there's going to be an element of trust here. So, for me, I'm kind of, as an analyst inside now, I would always respect the data regardless of the scenario. So as Glassnode being an analytical company, I would like to think they would respect the data that they're given. Do I trust the exchanges to provide accurate and truthful information? Not all of them. So to be honest with you, there's going to be elements of error inside this data. And I'm not just going to kind of say this is 100% accurate, because I don't think that is the case. But I would say that Glassnode, I think anyone who's an analyst or anything like that would respect the data regardless of the outcome. If you don't, then you're in the wrong field, because you're just kind of trying to push your own narrative all the time. I don't think Glassnode are doing that. I think they are true to the data. But again, the data might be wrong because it comes from an unregulated environment, and exchanges will have been known to do a few dodgy things in the past. So, it is what it is. But for the most part, I think, yes, I can see Bitcoin leaving the exchanges are pretty consistent across multiple exchanges at that. So, on an average across all of those different exchanges that we spoke about, 4 million Bitcoin has left. And I can see an increase with wallets holding more than 1,000 BTC. Again, this actually isn't too difficult to check. So this one's actually quite safe to kind of rely on, because again, we can check this on the blockchain. The exchange data, you have to kind of rely on Glassnode knowing the internal exchange addresses, etc. So I think there's elements of error, but for the most part, I do think this is as accurate as you're going to find data when it comes to what is going on here with the price action of BTC, what's going on with the underlying data, and what I'm kind of expecting to happen next, right? So, which brings me back to the charts. If we zoom on out into our weekly and we bring this back down and we follow Elliott wave theory, okay, and we can actually track this quite well. So we've kind of got 5 waves being labeled up here. So I've got some AI running, by the way, guys. It's interesting. It's got the waves slightly differently than okay? So it'd be interesting to see how this plays out. But it's got its 5th wave exactly in the box that I have my 5th wave, okay? So for anyone who wants to know, there's Elliott wave. If I bring up my indicators here, where are you? Yeah, so chart pattern Elliott wave, okay? If you're on TradingView, have a look. It's not that brilliant, but I'm using it to kind of sense check my own waves, if you will. It's new, so check it out. But essentially, what I've got here is a 5th wave ending between $79,000 and $108,000. And it's put its 5th wave right there on that $79,000, okay? It's also tracking this ABC down, which I've got as well, so that's good to know that it's at least thinking the same as me on that kind of pattern. It's also thinking that this so it's interesting. We'll see how that plays out. But for the most part, I think this is going to be about $79,000 to $108,000 and possibly even $165 if it pushes higher. I'm not 100% confident on, a $246,000 BTC. Possible, of course, but it really does depend on what happens next. Let's kind of keep it into the realm of possibility to start with. So 79 to 108, that's right there on my kind of chart here. And that would be pretty much aligned to everything else that we're kind of looking at here. It's actually tracking that as a 5-wave move, which would actually make that entire thing a wave 3, which would be really interesting because it means that we still have a really massive wave 5 later. That's a really interesting point, actually. But nonetheless, I'll dive into the AI's elements later at some point. But for now, that's kind of where I'm thinking Bitcoin is likely to go. So watch out for this. I think there's a lot of things going on in the background. There's lots of noise, lots of nonsense in the space. But, do what is right for you guys, right? Follow the data. Not necessarily an influencer, myself included. Sense check everything, and I think you'll be able to navigate this space perfectly fine. Guys, I'm going to leave the video there. If you have found this useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you happen to be new to the channel, why not go ahead and subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With all that said, done, out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.